Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
When we see somebody is trying to sort of manipulate the system for their own personal electoral advantage, people see through that. And I believe that's what happened in Nova Scotia. There was no need to call that election, and there's no need to call this federal election now either. To call an election just so you can secure your spot for the next 4 years because you think you're going to get a majority is unfair to Canadians. It's an expensive process. It's at the wrong time. People are coming out of the pandemic now. We want to bring back optimism and ensure that people get back to work and back to a semblance of normal life. Instead, we're embroiled in the middle of an election that nobody wants.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, that might just cost Justin Trudeau. I think even if he gets the status quo, a Liberal minority government, that is in a sense a failure, is it not?
No, absolutely.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Richmond Hill, Ontario, and I'm with Costas Menegakis. He is the Conservative candidate for the riding of Richmond Hill, and he has graciously made himself available for a brief interview about the election and other issues that are facing Canada right now. Well, Costas, I got to tell you, we bumped into each other a couple of years ago. We had an interview. This is a fascinating riding. Majid Johari, the Liberal, he won by 112 votes back in 2019. Can you tell us a little bit how that campaign went? Because I'm going by memory, Costas, and I seem to recall you went to bed thinking you were the winner of the election campaign for Richmond Hill in 2019. You woke up the next day. Apparently, the mail-in ballots skewed things Mr. Johari's way. Am I getting that right?
Yes, there's 237 polls, if I remember correctly, 236. A resident right here in Richmond Hill. So after the 236 were counted, I won the election. But then there's another poll, and that's the national poll counted in Ottawa with all of the out-of-town votes that came in. And about 2:30 in the morning, it flipped the election around, and I ended up losing actually by 212 votes.
Oh, okay then. I got that number incorrect then. But still, technically a horse race, given the size of the riding, that number. You know, Costas, I want to talk about you and your campaign, of course, but, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Mr. Johari. This is someone who is pro-Iranian regime. I find it astonishing. One of the latest news stories is that he's in cahoots with a fellow funding his election campaign who is under a CSIS investigation as being potentially a national security risk to Canada because of getting money out of Iran and into Canada via Dubai. What I'm getting at is that there's so much baggage, I think, with Mr. Johari, and we are living in a riding where there is a very significant Persian population. I've lived in Richmond Hill more than 20 years. The Persians I meet here are the type of people I find who fled Iran to start a new life with freedom. How is it that the representative, the member of parliament, the Liberal member of parliament, is so closely linked to the regime?
Well, that certainly is the perplexing question a lot of people have. I hear at the door, particularly from Persian Canadians, when they answer the door. Iranian people are big contributors to Richmond Hill in terms of the economy, the culture, the beautiful multicultural mosaic we have in this city. But a lot of them are perplexed themselves as to how Mr. Johari can continue to hold the position he does and not take a strong position in favor of freedom in Iran. I tell you what I find really surprising is that I'll ring a doorbell and people will come to the door and they'll say, "Oh, Costas, you're running again. How are you?" And then they ask me who the MP is. I was the MP for 4.5 years. He's been the MP for 6 years now. People are asking me who the MP is. And so I find that sad in a way, that somebody can be sitting as a representative of the people of Richmond Hill, and the people of Richmond Hill don't even know who he is.
Yeah, and he was also a signatory to a letter a few months ago urging the Prime Minister to condemn Israel regarding the most recent flare-up in the Middle East. He is also being less than honest about his credentials as an engineer. So like I said, Costas, a lot of baggage. And folks, we do always want to get the other side of the story. So a few days ago, I did go to a Majid Johari event in Richmond Hill. Didn't go so well. Check it out.
Please wait.
Even liberals have denounced you, Mr. Johari.
I don't know what you're talking about. Can you kindly wait up?
You are associated with someone who is under investigation by CSIS, who has contributed to your campaign. What do you have to say about that?
I've responded to that question already.
Oh, okay. Can you respond right now, sir?
That was in a social gathering, and that fund has been.
When was that picture taken? Hey, how you doing, officer? How are you? Good. Are you here for me?
We've been called for something.
Okay. Okay, then
Stop.
why are you walking so close to me?
Stop, because you're in my area. Okay?
Well, you told me to come outside and I acquiesced to your demand, Mr. Johari.
I've answered all your questions. It's better that you stop.
Maybe this is a case for a detective or something to look into. I mean,
You're telling me CSIS is investigating. I think it's above our pay scale.
okay. So there you have it, Costas. Mr. Johari, after he told me to leave the premises, which I did, still called the police, even though I was reporting from a public sidewalk. Did he get the Greater Toronto Area confused with the city of Tehran?
Yeah, I don't understand that, why he would do something like that. I mean, you're doing your job, and that's what journalism is all about. This is a close writing. You're not the first journalist that has shown interest in this particular writing, given how close it was last time. And I think we as candidates have a responsibility to respond to questions that are important to the people of Richmond Hill. And I know I'm excited to talk about Canada's recovery plan and securing the future of the country, where we have a very strong platform, and I'm delighted to speak about it. I don't know what his problem or his issues are. He seems to run away a lot from a lot of things.
He sure does. And let's talk about all things conservative. I would say, and I think a lot of neutral observers would say, Costas, that last week was a pretty good week for Aaron O'Toole and a pretty bad week for Justin Trudeau. Of course, an election campaign can always rebound. Things can go the other way. But what was your assessment of week one of the 2021 election campaign?
Sure. Our leader, Aaron O'Toole, came out very strong, talking about Canada's recovery plan, about securing the future for our country, talking about creating 1 million jobs in the first year, good paying jobs that Canadians need to pay their bills, fulfill their dreams and their aspirations for their households, talking about the need to invest in mental health. We've seen with the advent of the pandemic what that has done to many, many families, talking about bringing accountability back to government. We have a prime minister who was the only one in Canadian history that has ever been found guilty of ethics violations, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Yes.
Talking about the need to manufacture our own vaccines, our own medical equipment, our own PPE equipment to ensure that the country is better prepared for the future, and talking about bringing back some stability to Canada's economy. And where are we going? We're $1.4 trillion debt now. We're paying $3 billion a month, monthly, per month, federally for the debt, another $1 billion provincially. Imagine that the schools, the infrastructure, the subways, the community centers we can build with an additional $4 billion a month. And Justin Trudeau came out swinging, talking about trying to attack our leader, trying to attack the conservative policy, trying to find wedge issues to separate himself, to try to, play on the emotions of people, and people aren't buying it.
And in terms of monetary policy, which you bring up, Costas, Trudeau saying he really doesn't know much about monetary policy. I would say you're the prime minister. Learn about that really quickly.
The biggest, most important economic policy this government, if re-elected, would move forward. You'll forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy.
Yeah, I mean, he throws out buzzwords that he thinks will grab people's attention to try to curtail favor for himself. But people are seeing through him now. I'll tell you, I've been door knocking consistently every single day, the better part of 8 to 10 hours. In the past, since the election was called, the number one issue at the door is, why are we in an election?
Yes.
People are wondering, why are we in an election? There's a pandemic going on. The numbers appear to be going up again. People are trying to get back to work. They're trying to get some back some semblance of organization in their lives. At the end of this, nightmare we've all lived over the past almost 2 years now, and yet he's calling an election because he happened to be up in the polls and thought, "Geez, let me grab a majority and fool the people," and people aren't buying it.
No, and indeed, what was the need for this? Jagmeet Singh, Aaron O'Toole even said, we'll work with you. The government was never brought down on any issue, so it's all about getting a majority. I think you're right. I think Costas people see through that. Do you think, though, that given the timing of the election kickoff, and we've seen exactly around the same time what happened in Afghanistan, maybe Justin Trudeau was having buyer's remorse by calling an early election?
Well, no doubt. I mean, Justin Trudeau is used to people, tapping him on the back and telling him how wonderful he is. But there's real issues that are affecting the country and real issues that are affecting Canadians. And he's got to be able to answer those questions without, dancing around with just, these, for the lack of a better term, these motherly terms. At the end of the day, it's substance, and that's the contrast that people are seeing now with Aaron O'Toole. Aaron O'Toole is responding to questions to the point. He's responding to policy, speaking about his vision for the country, speaking about Canadians and Canadian families and Canadian businesses. And Justin Trudeau is talking about, things that are no substance.
And Costas, a big part, of course, is getting the message out. And I'm wondering if Mr. O'Toole, if you yourself feel you're going to get a fair shake from the mainstream media, most of whom are unionized with Unifor. And folks, do you remember that disgraceful ad that debuted earlier this month by Unifor, that attack on Mr. O'Toole and Mr. Harper? Check this out.
The next model of conservative is here. Meet the 2021 O'Toole, ready to steer Canada in the wrong direction. Engineered by big corporations to leave us behind. Driven to cut health care and public services, just like Jason Kenney. Another out-of-touch politician at a price we can't afford. Meet the 2021 O'Toole. New name, same old conservative.
So there we have Unifor. We know exactly where they stand when it comes to Conservatives. So I'll ask you the question, Costas, do you think the Conservative Party of Canada can get fair treatment from the mainstream media?
Well, I'm hoping that we do. Okay, I know that it's an issue that has come up, certainly of concern to a lot of the local campaigns and to our national campaign. But I think media in general, all media, they'll read the mood of the people, and it's Canadians that will drive, I think, the message out there. And more, we're finding at the door the Canadians are resonating with our message this time around.
And Costas, tell me, there are rumblings too with the Conservative Party that on certain issues, many of the party members might be at odds with Mr. O'Toole. Two that spring to mind, sex-selective abortions and climate change as being the reason to have a carbon tax. It seems to me most Conservatives, are against that, but Mr. O'Toole is for that. What's your take on that issue?
Yeah, I can tell you that traditionally, Conservatives, they look to the actual meaning of what these policies are. I think Mr. O'Toole has done a good job in putting a lot of those things to bed. I think he's made his position very, very clear, the position of the party very, very clear. We don't want to talk about wedge issues that divide Canadians. We want to focus what's important for Canadians today. And there are issues that are far more important than those wedge issues that are the opposing parties have used, particularly the Liberals have used against us election after election after election.
How about yourself, though, Costas? Are you supportive of a carbon tax? This is going to make the lives of Canadians that much more financially challenging, especially if you're in the farming community. What that's going to do to the cost of running a farm, it's going to be a terrible burden. Where do you stand on the issue of a carbon tax in the name of climate change?
Yeah, carbon tax is what the Liberals have. What we have is you're buying a carbon credit. So if you go fill up your gas, you're going to get on your credit card a credit for the amount of the carbon tax that's on there, the carbon credit. You can then use that. It's your money. So that will accumulate on your credit card. You'll then go into Home Depot to buy let's just say, biodegradable grass bags to put your grass in, and you'll be able to use your own money, those credits towards that. The money never hits the government. The money stays on your card for you.
So are you saying that Canadians would be ahead of the game with this kind of a scheme that Mr. O'Toole is proposing? Because I've heard the opposite from some observers.
Well, I for one would be very pleased that when I spend money and there's a carbon element to the cost of what I am purchasing, that cost is on my card that I can use myself. And I like the idea of all Canadians having that ability to do that, because that means everybody's contributing to ensuring that we have a clean environment.
Now, don't get me wrong. I am so grateful that you're, making time to have an interview with us, Costas. But by the same token, Mr. O'Toole will not come on Rebel News. And I find it funny because 13 months ago, when the Independent Press Gallery had the debate in downtown Toronto, Aaron O'Toole showed up. He took questions from me. I found him intelligent. I found him charming. And I don't know what's happened in the last 13 months where suddenly we're persona non grata. But as my boss Ezra likes to say, the mean girls in the media party, the CPC, the Toronto Star, he's got tons of time for them. Kind of the same strategy Andrew Scheer, quite frankly, followed in 2019. Can you give me some insight as to why that may be, sir?
I have no insight to that. Certainly no one in the party has told me not to speak with Rebel Media. I can tell you this, that I'm focused here in Richmond Hill, right? And I'm focused on knocking on every single door. I'm about 70% done around the riding the first time around, spreading the message. I hope that that resonates and resonates well by September the 20th of this year. I have no inside knowledge that I can impart on other things. Okay. With respect to your question, truthfully.
Fair enough. Next time you see him, tell him I'm always open to having an interview. I certainly don't hold grudges. And when it comes to Richmond Hill, again, Costas, I would suspect this is because it was so close in the 2019 election, this might be one of the few ridings where the PPC candidate might make a difference. In other words, if there was no such thing as the People's Party of Canada, you subtracted those votes and you added them to the Conservative candidate, it might have been a different scenario in 2019. Does that worry you, the idea of vote splitting in 2021?
Yeah, this time around there's a lot less talk of PPC, you may have noted. Absolutely a lot less talk. Their leader certainly hasn't set the world on fire with policy and with what his vision is for Canada and where we're heading. So I don't discount anybody who's running against me by any stretch of the imagination. My job is to spread the message of my party and what I believe in, which is what I'm doing. So I'm hopeful that people will see that for what it is.
And again, when you are door knocking, and I know you're putting a lot of mileage on your loafers these days, Costas, what are the key issues the people that you speak to, what are they saying are their biggest concerns right now?
Well, I'll tell you, here in Richmond Hill is some specific things. First of all, very few people want an election. Okay, that's the number one thing is, why are you here? Why are we in the middle of an election at this juncture? That's first of all. Richmond Hill is nestled in the heart of the GTA, so transportation is a big issue. Aaron O'Toole has come out in support of the Yonge North subway line to finally bring the subway to Richmond Hill. It's very important for Richmond Hill. It's very much a bedroom community. People are leaving Richmond Hill to work and to come back. Yonge Street from 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning, and from pretty much 4:30 to 6:30 in the afternoon is a parking lot through the downtown core of Richmond Hill. So transportation is a key issue. Housing affordability is a huge issue. Parents are concerned for their kids and whether they'll be able to buy a home in the community they grew up in, and young people that wanting to come into the market, they don't want to move an hour and a half north of here to be able to have a home that they can bring up their families in. So for housing affordability is a big deal. A lot of people concerned about the economy and where we're heading. Yesterday, for example, I was in a local restaurant right here in Richmond Hill, and the owner, I said to him, "How's it going?" He says, I said, "Have you been busy?" He says, "We've been very busy, but I can't get my staff back." He says, "I have people that come and say to me, you know what, I'll come if you pay me under the table." And he says, we can't do that as a business.
Really? And the rationale for that? So he keeps getting the CERB?
The rationale is that, there are people that are collecting the CERB and are choosing to make money on the side. In addition to the CERB, they make more money. The economy has somehow been skewed with that. If you speak to restaurant owners, you will get that story from one after another. People are having a hard time getting their employees back, which is why number one thing on our platform for securing the future is to create the atmosphere in which 1 million new jobs are back.
And certainly, I mean, in terms of the debt and the deficit, the price tag for what's happened to this nation, what's happened to the world in terms of COVID-19 costs, it has been enormous. And like I said, we have a prime minister saying, he's not all that into monetary policy. Years ago, he said the budget will balance itself. How do you make sense of that?
It's difficult to make sense. Look, a lot of the supports that were out in the first, and right off the top, like CERB, like the wage subsidy, were very much needed. People needed those supports. They need them. And it helped a lot of families, helped with their daily bills, helped with their rent, it helped with their mortgage, helped with putting food on the table. So, which is why our party supported them, right? But now is the time to get the economy back on track. And it's important that we do that. I think the people that need the support should continue to get those supports. But we should, create an environment in which people want to go back to work when the jobs are available and they can do them.
And Costas, of course, as we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, the big issue is vaccines, and especially the issue of mandatory vaccinations. Right now, it seems to be that, they are not mandatory to have, but if you want to get on a plane or a train, if you want to go to a Raptors or Leafs game, if you want to go to a rock concert, you better be jabbed or it's no dice. So it's in effect created, I think, two classes of citizens in Canada. What are your thoughts on vaccinations?
Well, vaccinations are good in that that people are being protected with the vaccination, but not all people can take the vaccination. Some have medical reasons not to take it. Some have other personal reasons not to take the vaccination. I think our party's position is a very balanced one, and I support it 100%, is that, we urge people to get the vaccination if they can, and if they can't or don't want to, then subject them to, a rapid test to determine their safety and the safety of others that they come in close contact with. I think that's a balanced approach. I know that the Liberals and Justin Trudeau in particular are trying to make that a wedge issue, but it's not what Canadians want.
Yeah, and I saw some media action just today, actually, coming up to this interview, some people in the media condemning Mr. O'Toole for not demanding that his own candidates are vaccinated, much like Doug Ford, the premier here in Ontario. He has that demand, and last week we saw Rick Nichols kicked out of caucus because he refused to get vaccinated by 5 p.m. Thursday. What do you, I think it speaks maybe to media bias and also this almost mob mentality of certain factions out there that really want to see everybody double vaccinated or you're out. Your response?
I'm double vaccinated. This is going to get this on the record right up front. And I believe that if someone cannot get vaccinated or does not want to be subjected to a test, a rapid test to determine their safety and the safety of others is a good thing. So that way everybody's protected. But I don't think you can mandate absolutely every single person or else you're out. Okay.
And one last thing, speaking of provincial politics, what we saw last week in Nova Scotia, big surprise. Conservative government came in. I don't think anyone was really predicting that. I'm not saying a federal election will follow what happens in the province of Nova Scotia, but certainly this must be a boost of confidence for Conservatives, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we look, when we see somebody is trying to sort of manipulate the system for their own personal electoral advantage, people see through that. And I believe that's what happened in Nova Scotia. There was no need to call that election, and there's no need to call this federal election now either. To call an election just so you can secure your spot for the next 4 years because you think you're going to get a majority is unfair to Canadians. It's an expensive process. It's at the wrong time. People are coming out of the pandemic now. We want to bring back optimism and ensure that people get back to work and back to a semblance of normal life. Instead, we're embroiled in the middle of an election that nobody wants.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, that might just cost Justin Trudeau. I think even if he gets the status quo, a Liberal minority government, that is in a sense a failure, is it not?
No, absolutely. But I'm confident that people will see the strong message that our party has, a conservative message. So, Justin Trudeau will get what he deserves, as far as I'm concerned.
And Costas, I think I've covered most of the questions I wanted to ask you. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is important to discuss right now?
No, I think you've pretty much covered everything. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to once again represent my party and to have such a strong message. For me, it's about giving back to the community. I've always said that when you're elected, you sit in a borrowed chair. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people that gave you a right to sit in that chair. And that's what I am asking my constituents in Richmond Hill, to see Costas Menegakis for who he is. I'm here for Richmond Hill. I'm here. That's my priority. I have no other hidden agenda other than to give back to my community and to ensure that Richmond Hill gets its fair shake.
And one last question, Costas. If we were in one of those condo towers and you're in an elevator with someone who is undecided who he or she is going to vote for come September 20th, what is your 30-second elevator pitch in terms of here's why you should vote for Costas Menegakis?
My pledge to you as a voter is that I will work tirelessly 7 days a week, 24 hours around the clock, to be your representative and a strong voice for you in Parliament. I hope that by September 20th, I earn your vote.
Well, Costas, it was an absolute delight speaking with you. Any of your colleagues, including Leona Alislav, who represents my riding in Richmond Hill, if she wants to come on the record, Mr. O'Toole wants to come on the record, we are more than happy to speak to anyone in this election. So I want to thank you sincerely for being so generous with your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the victory party on nationally and every riding across the country.
Okay, good luck, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, folks, the election campaign is off and running. Let me ask you a question. Do you trust the mainstream media? Do you trust the likes of the CPC and the Toronto Star to tell the truth as they cover this campaign? I sure don't. That's why, please, if you can, make a donation so that we can report the truth of what's happening out on the hustings. Go to realreporters.ca. That's realreporters.ca. And if you're able to, kindly make a contribution.